Hey friends, Olivia from Ollie. Between new routines and the ultimate group project known as parenting, you need science-backed solutions that work with your life. That's where Ollie comes in. Start your mornings off right with multis made to support nutrition and immune health. Choose from our lineup of gut-supporting probiotics, and we've got occasional sleep support to help the whole fam chase their big dreams. Head back to class with the #1 gummy supplement brand. Stock up on ollie.com today. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast instead of doom scrolling? Smart move. Another smart move? Getting help from one of State Farm's 19,000 local agents when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
For listeners that have been with me since season 1, this interview should be no surprise at all. As a regular attendee for the Supernatural conventions, of course I had to speak with one of the founders about how they got started, what it's like to put on a small but impactful event, and where they're headed to next. To introduce today's guest, I think it's easiest to give you a bit of background on Creation Entertainment from their very own website. Founded in 1971 by Gary Berman and Adam Malin, two young teenage sci-fi fans in New York, Creation Entertainment continues a 53-year tradition of producing the world's leading fan conventions for followers of genre television and film. Inventing the concept of traveling fan conventions, Creation has brought its brand of live interactive entertainment events to millions of attendees throughout the United States, Canada, and Great Britain. Beginning with the development of localized comic book conventions in the 1970s and 80s, including its long-running annual Thanksgiving weekend event in Manhattan, Creation later moved its interests into focusing on sci-fi, fantasy, and horror television series and films. Creation's long-running comic conventions were amongst the first gatherings to preview upcoming genre films and TV shows. Yeah, I'd agree with that description. And I'd also say that Creation really made their name with Star Trek, with an annual convention in Vegas that continues to draw fans from around the world. But, as you know, they've continued to branch out into new fandoms and spaces, and it was through the Supernatural fandom that I first attended one of their cons in Kansas City. This interview with Gary Berman is also perfect timing, since I'm about to be headed to New Jersey for both the Supernatural Con, but also to see Dick Jr. and the Volunteers perform at Mercury Lounge in New York City. Which, if you'll be there, please come say hi. I always love meeting listeners when I can. Okay, let's get to the interview. Yeah, well, first I want to start by just asking how you got into the fandom convention circuit to begin with. Like, was there an event that you attended that inspired you?
Actually, when we were 14, a buddy of mine named Adam Malin, attended the New York Comic Con, which was one of like 3 conventions a year at that time. And he came back and said, this was so much fun, we should run our own. And, we were like 14, but we decided to do it. And, the parents were supportive and it was successful. Was at the New Yorker Hotel, which actually still is standing in Manhattan, and 800 people came, and we made $800, and we were on our way, and we started running an annual comic convention called Creation Thanksgiving, and that was several years, through college and so forth. But after college, we said, hey, this is working out. Let's try to make a business of it. So because obviously reading comics and sci-fi and meeting those celebrities was a passion of ours because it was our hobby. And we started traveling around the country. We were the first people to ever, now these giant fan expos go from city to city. But really, back in the early 80s, that was us. And we were the first people to invite the special effects people and, the people behind the scenes, trying to give them some attention, which worked out very nicely. And then we started noticing that Star Trek was becoming a cult favorite. And we introduced Star Trek celebrities to our Comic Cons, and they overpowered the comic side. So we started doing the Star Trek conventions, and then we kind of became a little bit famous for running hundreds of Star Trek conventions all around North America and a few in Britain. So that was a big deal for many years. And we worked with all the original cast members. And then when the next generation came in, and even to this day, we run the world's biggest Star Trek convention in Vegas every year. So we've kept that. And at that point, we were the first people to get a license from a studio to produce fan merchandise, which is pretty cool. So we started doing Star Trek official photos and T-shirts and hats and selling them to conventions, and that worked out rather well. And the whole Star Trek thing started to get some notoriety within the entertainment industry, the studios. So we were able to parlay that into deals on, pretty much any sci-fi franchise you could name. We got involved with because they all wanted to work with us, which is pretty cool. So, you have Stargate and Star Wars and Terminator and Xena, the X-Files we toured with. And then sometime back, we invited Jared Padalecki to these Weekend of Horror conventions we were doing. We also started the horror convention business, which was cool. And we ran probably 100 of those. And Jared was a big hit. And then we started running supernatural conventions, as you probably know. And it's been 20 years. It's hard to believe. And what was cool was Jared and Jensen, when we first talked to them about doing this, they were in their 20s, but they got it. They knew that they had tons of passionate fans. And they wanted to deliver some sort of entertainment that the fans would enjoy, and we wanted it to be more than just a standard convention, and so that's the reason behind Loudon and Swain and the house band, and the lighting and the reserve seating. We kind of want what we created as kids mutated into this billion-dollar industry of these giant fan expos. And, they're all about the transactions of photo ops and autographs. That's what they're all about. I mean, we have to have that because we have to pay everybody. But our focus has always been on the presentations on stage and, making, with comedy hosts and, we use Richard for that. But that translates into the other, we're running a Star Trek convention. We have all of that as well. And the whole concert at night was part of that too. Because, they're talented, these people. And we as fans want to see them perform. So that was the reason behind Misha doing the one-man show. We had to talk him into it, but look how great that turned out.
Oh, so it's your fault we have that now. No.
It's totally my fault, and he'll admit it. It took some pushing, but man, he did such a great job. And I saw it evolve because I saw it, throughout the whole term. And now he has a whole one-man show. He could do that forever.
Yeah, so he can take that out any nightclub he wants to go to if he wanted to.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think he may have plans to do something. I don't know. So that's cool. So the whole idea of passionate fans meeting their idols, heroes, whatever, and learning more about the production of the TV shows and films that they enjoy or whatever they enjoy. That's been carried over into so many different fields right now. I mean, like I'm on these feeds every week. There's some sort of convention, nostalgia, Fan Expo Anaheim, local conventions, one of ours. Even so far as, sports now does it with Fanatics. They have their own conventions. And this weekend we ran a show for Broadway fans. That was pretty extraordinary. And so the whole idea translates into so many different other fields that it's been nice to see. It's also cool that we're starting to get a little recognition for the fact that, we kind of were there in the beginning.
I was going to say, there weren't a lot there in the early days because the original comic conventions were really people who are bringing their comic books to read them, trade them, talk about them, not so much these multi-talented, multi-type of events that I feel like we see really commonly these days.
Yeah, well, when we were running comic book conventions, you're right. They were just about comic books, and the only guests were the artists and writers. And then, I mean, I don't want to take responsibility for this, but we started inviting the first comic conventions to start inviting, show business celebrities. And we started small, Grandpa Munster or, Gilligan, those type of celebrities. But, it built up to the point where, Arnold Schwarzenegger was coming dressed as Terminator to one of our shows, and George Lucas came. And we introduced Gene Roddenberry to him on stage. So we started, you start small and build up. But now, the conventions are, who's the big celebrity I can get an autograph or photo up from. And that's just not what we evolved into.
I actually want to ask about this and how you feel if folks from Hollywood, whether they be, the celebrities or more of the behind the scenes tech folks, have they changed in their relationships to how they view conventions in general? Does that seem like a shift?
Well, yeah, I think there have been two changes. And we hear this all the time. One, there's really at this stage no, block for why a celebrity won't do them or feel that it's not what they're into when you see the type of celebrities that have crossed over to doing them now. So, the major names that when we were kids, you wouldn't think you'd get that level. They're all starting to do it. And the reason for them is money. I mean, when you see people charging $400 to $500 for an autograph at these fan expo shows, geez, that's a lot of money. And then the way that starts to affect the rest of the industry is the vendors there. And, the up and coming artists, there's no money left for them. Because if I'm spending $400 for, the Star Wars lead actor, I don't have much money to spend in Artist Alley. So we start to see that happening now. And I hope it doesn't affect those events too much.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it's a good thing that more actors are feeling like, oh yes, this is like an interesting experience to be involved in that's maybe going to be part of my career. But as more and more, A-list or whatever, top tier, most expensive, it becomes a power law and there's nothing left for up and comers, essentially, is the concern.
That is the concern. Yeah, and a lot of that is coming out of Fan Expo Anaheim, which was this past weekend. But these things evolve and change. The whole thing that we did, and this was early on, was have reserved seating. Because I couldn't stand it, and Adam, we could not stand people going to these big Comic Cons or expos and not knowing if they were going to see the celebrity that they wanted to see. Because you had to wait in line for hours just to get into a theater, and God forbid, you had to leave to take a pee. Forget it. So that we changed. And I think at this point, we're the only fan convention doing reserve seating. And, if you want to see Jensen and Jared, you're going to see them.
Guaranteed.
Because you pay for it. Yeah, and I like the reserve seating because it gives, our general admission reserve seating is not that much more than you would pay for a comic expo, but you're going to see the stars you come for. And frankly, the overcrowding is, I think, dangerous that I see.
I was going to say, I've been to San Diego a couple times and I did the taking turns with shifts standing in line for Hall H. I was like, oh, if your whole plan is I'm going to hang out outside and talk to other nerds, I guess it's okay. But if you wanted to do anything else during the day, that's shot. Like, you're just in line.
Yeah, if you want to wait for Mark Hamill for 4 hours, that's your right to do it. But please don't compare that experience to the entertainment event that we're doing. Because that's not what we're about. And when we have our star sign, it's structured and there's a time and we don't oversell. I'm not saying that they did, but, it's happened where they have. So, just a different experience. People can decide which ones they love better.
Yeah, I also really enjoy, personal preference, obviously, because I keep going to creation events. I love that there are so many other types of ways to have interactions. Like, I love the big panels. It's fun to still do the autos and photos, but I like that there are, movies and chill with Jake, or you can do, the pajama party. Like, these are really clever add-ons. I was curious what inspired you guys to start adding, because I know it's not just Supernatural. I know there are also these kinds of events for like the Trek convention.
Yeah, I can't recall actually when we started, but I knew that, and Adam and the rest of the company knew that those experiences were going to be really cool and valuable for fans who, frankly, that if they could afford it, because they're done with bidding a lot of times. And the celebrities, interestingly enough, one of the big stars of Supernatural said that was his favorite part of the whole convention. And I'm like, really? And and it was nice to hear such a big star say that. Yeah, because they get to know their fans on a much more personal basis. And I haven't been to a lot of them, but for them I hear they're pretty good. They're pretty fun.
Yeah, I'm trying to hit them all. That's my goal. Is every time I go, I try a little something different, you
Yeah,
know.
well, we're trying to get the celebrities to do something new each year. So hopefully that'll take place. Yeah.
What's the biggest challenge for like structuring these kinds of events? Is it figuring out hotel space? Is it coordinating schedule? I mean, there's so many moving parts. I can't believe you did something like this when you were 14, even if it was a
Without cell
smaller.
phones.
Yeah, that's insane.
And wait a minute, without computers, we used to have to have. Well, first of all, we had to mail out all of the flyers about the conventions, right? And people had to mail in with the check. We had to cash the checks. I mean, and if they wrote in, it was by letter. And literally, we would have a telephone number on, and it was my parents' number, which wasn't pretty great. Yeah. So a lot was just doing whatever we had to get through it. Yeah, we were able to keep track of everything. Now the way we do it is everything's divided up. So Adam books the space, and I'm in charge of the marketing, and we have folks who book the talent. With Supernatural, it's relatively easy because obviously we know everybody. We've been working with them for 20 years. With the Broadway show, that was new, so we had to break in there. And it was a challenge to convince some of these big Broadway stars that a fan convention was a viable, fun thing for them to do. But that attitude changed this weekend for sure. So. Yeah, so that was really nice. And with Star Trek, obviously, we're pretty well known. The whole rescue verse thing that we're doing is interesting as well because these fan conventions have gone from just being genre related to now covering anything. So we're having some success with first responders type conventions. And again, those stars were hesitant in the beginning. They've come to 3 or 4 of the ones we've done, and they're enjoying the experience. So we're going to announce 4 or 5 more very soon.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah,
Something
it
to look
is.
forward to.
Absolutely, yeah.
I was also curious, did you feel like COVID changed the way that you run conventions, that conventions work in general? Has there been, I mean, like there was such a dip and now there was like a massive flux. And I'm
Yeah.
curious if you feel like things have evened out, if there are things that have changed
Yeah, that's a really
permanently.
good question. Our other company that we run is called Fit Expo, and we do these big fitness expos in California. And that was devastated by COVID. And with creation, we had to cancel maybe 30 events, and that also was extremely tough. The only way that we survived that was that the fans all were willing to keep their money with us until we could announce a new date. And also Jared and Jensen and Misha and the rest of the cast were willing to, keep rolling every time we had to announce a new date, sometimes more than once. So it was definitely a team effort, but I think like maybe 85% of the fans let us keep their money. And that, the tickets are not cheap. They're expensive. And it was really lovely. And yeah, we're really gratified that we're still here and, stronger than ever. But I think now, at least in the fitness section, because we have one coming up in Anaheim, I think we're finally over the effects of COVID because there were obviously some years after where people I think remain hesitant. The Fit Expo is more like a San Diego Comic-Con, so you do have those large crowds. We don't oversell, but there's still large crowds. Supernatural was always, not as packed by intent. We
Yeah.
only wanted to have like 1,500 to 2,000 people.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's comfortably full. It's like you're gonna run into your friends, but you're not gonna have a problem getting to the bathroom or something. Like it's
Exactly,
okay.
yeah. And you don't want to go to an empty event either.
No, yeah,
No.
those are a whole separate conversation I'm hoping to have with some
Absolutely, yeah.
folks.
Definitely. But well, every promoter is trying to do a good job. Sometimes there are things that happen out of control. Cancellations are probably the hardest things that we deal with when celebrities cancel. But everyone has their personal lives, and a lot of times people cancel, and we know the reason, but the celebrities are it's their personal lives. They don't want the stuff out there. So yeah, that's the toughest because we know that, and they know that sometimes people will travel a long ways to see them. So I know at least in Supernatural case, the boys don't really like to cancel because they know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that totally makes sense. It's interesting because these conventions, especially like creation conventions, you do actually get to have these conversations with the talent. You get to know them somewhat. I mean, like it's a professional relationship. You're not best friends. And so people do have these really strong reactions to people canceling. I'm curious if like how you think about maintaining that social distance while still getting to have that personal connection. Because, like I said, I did a season on parasociality, and I think there's like a fine line to walk there of having real connection without
You're talking
over
about as a
promising.
promoter or as a
Yeah, as a
fan?
promoter, like
Oh, um, since I was a kid, Adam really has handled the relationships with the celebrities more than I have. And he's great at, you know, separating that in some way. I don't know. Like every time we deal with a big celebrity, he ends up having their personal cell phone, and he hangs out with them, and I guess he makes them feel comfortable with our experience and with the show. I saw that with the rescue people. The big stars were super friendly with him right off the bat. So yeah, yeah, he doesn't, and I don't. It's not like you go to dinner with these guys.
right.
Even when the show is over, they like to either rest or go to dinner with their castmates. I wouldn't feel comfortable there anyway.
I know you'd be like, I'm the odd one out. I don't think I
Yeah,
belong here.
yeah. No, I used to have to. I didn't have to, but I went to dinner with all the original Star Trek people, not Bill and Leonard, but everyone else. And I was a kid. I didn't really belong there. So
Um, well, I'm also curious to hear what you think the future of conventions looks like, both with creation and just like in general. It does seem like it's a growing market. I think more people are interested in having these live experiential
yeah.
moments more than they are just, collecting Funko Pops, for example. So I'm curious where you see the future moving towards.
Yeah, another good question. I think the fan convention industry is like one of the biggest ways convention centers and cities are raising sales tax money. It's like crazy. There are a couple of things. I think there's a lot of enjoyment for fans to meet the people they grew up watching on TV and in movies. And these nostalgia type conventions that I'm seeing, those look like so much fun. We don't do them. Honestly, we did them 40 years ago. The celebrities were different then, so we don't do those. But they look like a lot of fun, and I see those traveling. I just think people are going to have new ideas for fans of different subject matters to get together, and as I say, meet the athletes in one case, or the artists, or whatever. I think for us, we're being approached all the time with, ideas for new themes for conventions. I'm always excited to hear what's up, and we're trying, to try something new. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Creatively, sometimes they work. Financially, they don't. But it's been fun. We've built up enough where we can take some risks if we think we can provide some entertainment. So yeah, I think it's a thriving business, as you say. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I hope that those big billion-dollar companies that own those big expo things, they cut back on the overcrowding and make it a more entertaining thing. Because when a person has a negative experience somewhere, they don't want to come to another one. Which is why we're trying to direct our advertising and say, we're not the typical convention. We're more of an entertainment experience. I hope you feel that way since you're attending them.
No, the way you're describing it, it makes me think about the difference between an amusement park and a theme park in like the truest sense of the words, right? Like one is like, yeah, they have lots of big rides. There might be the biggest roller coaster, but the theme park is like, we're gonna do all of the pieces that brought you into this interest that are related and are gonna really pull you in and make it feel like a lived experience and not just the scariest ride.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Yeah, that's a good analogy, and the supernatural talent knows the difference.
Yeah.
At least in the case of Jared and Misha, who do those other shows on occasion. Jensen really doesn't, I don't think. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, we like blew through all of my questions really quickly. I guess, oh, one other question I do want to ask is, do you feel like the kinds of attendees that you get at events have shifted over the years, over the decades?
Well, yeah, when we started, the whole fan thing was a male kind of thing. Comic books were mostly male followers. Very rarely did you have female comic fans. Now you have them tons of them, which is great. I remember we used to do panels, women in comics, and that we would get murdered for doing that now because but in the end there were so few. There were a lot of great female early comic book talent that broke through that barrier. So that was kind of cool to watch. So I mentioned that because our audience became more female focused as we started doing the things based on, well, Star Trek's 50-50 maybe. But as you know, Supernatural's probably, it started out more so, but I'd say 80-20 now. There are more guys watching.
I think I always wonder if it's the number of watchers versus people who watch and then also want to attend the events, right? Because I wonder if the television demographics are a little more 50-50.
You know what? It's interesting you say that again. I think you're definitely right. And it kind of makes sense because, ladies want to see Jaron Jensen in person.
Yeah,
maybe,
right.
Maybe if we
they're
bring
like,
it
well,
down
there's the attractive men, so.
and they're cool guys too. But I am seeing more guys coming, and I think that's great.
Do you see the same kind of demographics with Fit Expo, or is that tend to still skew more male, maybe?
Yeah, that's a little bit tougher because, the tickets are, $40. So guys will bring their girls. And so we don't know, but definitely heavier male because what we're doing is more about strength sports.
Right. So if it's a lot of like powerlifting, then who you would expect?
No, they're women, power lifters and bodybuilders too. But generally, there are more men who participate in those sports, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think so on average, at least.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I do think that there are changing demographics for also just, I think women are more open to going to events in person in some ways. I don't have a solid hypothesis here, but you hear a lot about like the male loneliness epidemic. And I'm like, is it just because women will go to fan conventions and make friends and men like the same shows, but like don't go to those events and then don't build community? I don't know. There's a hypothesis there somewhere.
That sounds like a challenge for a sociologist, right? And do you know Lynn?
Oh, yes. I know Lynn very well. Yeah.
Okay. I figured you would. Yeah. She's great. She's always telling me these kind of facts that I might not see it had she not brought them up. Yeah. One of the coolest things is the crossover that we're seeing between the fitness industry and the genre stuff. And it's coming because of anime. There are people who come to Fit Expo in cosplay. And I know. And it's generally, they may come as a superhero because they want to be in shape, but there's a lot of anime influence. And when we were kids and we had 4 comic book stores in New York and we had like these weird little books that were, Japanese and just pictures and we had a shelf of them and they started selling like really fast. And I'm like, what's going on? The shelf was always empty. So that was anime. We kind of caught on early and we started doing conventions for a TV series called Robotech, which was Japanese animation, but an American guy wrote an American story. And we actually ran events on that. So I think we were the first ones running an anime convention kind of tour. It's crazy. We kind of did everything first.
I know. Yeah. I mean, I remember going to some of those early anime conventions in Texas and I was like, oh man, these are crazy. Everyone's got incredible cosplay, but it's interesting you're seeing that at Fit Expo. That's so cool and maybe not unexpected now that I think about it. Because you
look at the anime characters, the way they're drawn, like the athletes.
And there's a lot of like shonen, which is fight anime. So you're like, I want to lift the heavy sword. I want to look like a badass. So yeah, that makes sense to me actually.
Yeah.
I know I only had 30 minutes of your time, so I want to make sure to respect that. But I wanted to ask if there's anything else that you thought was interesting to mention around fandom and convention cultures that speaks to you.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think, the fandoms that surround these shows have become really supportive. I mean, obviously, Supernatural is a good example of that. Well, first of all, when you go into a convention, you don't have to worry about making friends because everyone's sharing that common interest, and everyone might like this actor or that actress, but it's that's fun to talk about. I just think it's a welcoming community, and man, I've seen it make a difference with people who have social anxiety or challenges because it's such an open, welcome feeling. And I've dealt with a lot of folks who have these challenges, and it's so rewarding to see them be able to navigate a convention with the issues they're facing. And I know that not only our convention, but all of them have made changes in people's lives. I know it because I've seen it.
Yeah, no, I think that's 100% true. And I've definitely seen changes in only the few years that I've been attending.
Yeah,
So.
definitely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Gary Berman, co-founder of Creation Entertainment. As Gary noted, Creation continues to expand on what it means to run a fan convention with their successful Broadway convention, romance book adaptions convention, and upcoming Rescueverse cons that bring in actors from other genres and shows. I'll include a link to the podcast description where you can see more on their upcoming shows. I'll also link the Fit Expo that Gary mentioned, in case you're into fitness competitions as well. And if you want to learn more about supernatural conventions in particular, I did a whole episode about it in my first season. I mean, honestly, you could just listen to the entire first season, but I specifically recommend episode 8, where I go into more depth about the SPN Con experiences. Speaking of, like I said, I'll be at Creation's New Jersey convention later this month, so if you plan on attending, please come say hi. I always love to meet fellow fans and hear how their convention experience is going. Now for the show's credits. Music was composed and performed by Chris Scott. Cover art was designed by Liz Hand. In Defense of Fandom is a part of the Geekscape Podcast Network. If you like the show, giving us a review on Apple Podcasts is a great way to help support this work and even more listeners discover us. Your support is deeply appreciated.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.